Hey folks, this is Best in Slot and welcome to the second of 5 videos we'll be doing on Prehistoric Planet Season 2, covering the show as it airs throughout the week, focusing on dinosaur design discussion, reviewing the scenes and the episode in general, talking about the science on display and highlighting some of the fun camera trickery along the way. Today in episode 2, the longest episode of the bunch at 46 minutes, quite a lot longer than some of the others, we're heading to the Badlands. We're introduced to the largest expanse of lava to flood the Earth in 100 million years. This is Deccan, and it's our introduction for the very first time on PP to India. More specifically, this is the Deccan Traps, or what would become the Deccan Traps, a huge igneous province that's now made up of huge swathes of flood basalt. Everything is huge. But this is where it was created, at the very end of the Cretaceous 66.25 million years ago. And who could survive such an environment? Well, we get the answer via Isisaurus, a titanosaur from India and Pakistan. This thing is absolutely stunning, and possibly my favourite sauropod in the show now, above even the Dreadnoughtus from Season 1. The patterning and coloration and how it resembles the surrounding landscape, not to mention the true random nature of the spikes jutting forth from the spine, it's an absolute beauty. We see a large herd of them travelling the Deccan, all female apparently. The lava here is thick and all-encompassing, miles thick, and it frames the Ichthyosaurus beautifully. The way they've been integrated into these natural landscapes is nothing short of staggering, honestly, for most of this segment. A quick shout out to the sound design as well. These booming, almost mournful cries are a perfect, if slightly melancholy match for the raging backdrop. There's also another lovely camera effect here as the bodies of the Ichthyosaurus ripple under the lens, distorted by the extreme heat and the gaseous environment. Attenborough mentions that they've left their forest home behind to migrate through the Badlands. He doesn't say why quite yet, but we'll get to that in a little bit. There's more danger than the lava flow though, as toxic gases permeate the air, and especially in the early dawn, they settle close to the ground where they suffocate anyone inside. Fortunately, our Ichthyosaurus have big old necks and it keeps them above the poisonous fumes. Unfortunately, this is the scene I was talking about. I'm very complimentary of the CGI in this series because I think it's fantastic. I do have to try to be a little critical, a little fair, and mention when certain things don't hold up. And the shot here really stood out to me like a sore thumb. I'm unsure if it's a lighting issue, but the Ichthyosaurus feel very much placed in the environment rather than like they're inhabiting it. I digress. The Ichthyosaurus continues. No surprise, this is the longest episode when there's been several minutes at this point dedicated just to their travel. It's been given some room to breathe, unlike the Ichthyosaurus who are now choking on the fumes, rising up under the gaze of the morning sun. This does however give us our best look yet at the design of the dinosaur, solidifying it as one of my all-time favourites. It's really interesting that it has inverse counter shading, that is, the underbelly is actually darker than the back of the creature. In lots of animals this is reversed, think of sharks for example. As the light hits them from the top, what it does, it kind of balances out the light and the dark and it blends the animal in with their environment. In animals with reverse counter shading like this, it makes the animal more conspicuous and is typically a brash way of warding off potential predators, or is simply found on creatures that don't have any natural predators. Allow me one more frame to gush about the Ichthyosaurus, but just look at the texture on this thing when we see it up close. The scales with their individual pigmentation, the assortment of scratches, some of them sort of embedded into the skin, and some of them where the skin is sort of raised up over the scarring. The wrinkles and folds of fat and underlying muscle, I really am absolutely in love with this thing. Anyways, their goal is finally revealed. It's a crater called a caldera, which is formed upon the eruption and subsequent collapse of a volcano. It turns out they've gone through all of this for a communal nesting ground. The poisonous gases are warding off predators, and the intense heat of the earth acts as an incubator. It's worth mentioning here that the uncovered segment for this episode is all about how dinosaurs incubate and protect their eggs, and the evidence for the Deccan Traps here goes on to say they found dinosaur eggs in multiple layers of volcanic flow, suggesting the dinosaurs were laying their eggs here over the course of centuries and myriad visits. Now, whilst looking into this, I found another interesting tidbit about nesting in the region, a paper from just last year in 2022 by Demon et al., which described the very first ovum in ovo egg. That is, an egg within another egg. This is something sometimes seen in modern birds, but to date has never been seen in any reptile, living or dead, and it happens when the mother is undergoing extreme stress due to disease or extreme temperatures, stuff like that. This was discovered in a titanosaur egg from central India, just like these Isisaurus, and it suggests that sauropods' reproductive behaviour was similar to modern avian dinosaurs. Anyway, back to the Isisaurus, we get a brief moment of comedy as one of the mothers kicks up a trench, splattering a nearby resting one in the face, cough. And that's it for now. The babies need a few months to hatch, we'll be back to see them later. For now, instead, we're going to an unspecified region in Asia, assumedly Mongolia, given we're focusing in on Velociraptor. I find this very interesting. The show now calls it Velociraptor, the press releases call it Velociraptor, but it still isn't Velociraptor. It's a Velociraptorine, and I just saw Darren talk about this on Twitter the other day, mentioning that it isn't Velociraptor. We still don't know what it is, but it's not Velociraptor. But anyway, the point is just look at the baby. Look at the baby. I haven't seen the rest of the episode as I script this as I go along. But I swear to God, if anything happens to this thing, look at its little wings. It's got the little tail fan just sprouting in there. It's got a ball of red mohawk. My God, they're so tiny and they're all huddling together and The way they walk is incredible. Those tiny spindly legs look so awkward underneath their bodies. And that's showcased perfectly as one of them face plants into the sand. The animations on these guys really is beautifully done. They all feel inquisitive, they all feel individually full of life. You can see their throats filling with air with every single breath. And they're also unique and playful against each other. One bumps into its parent and is most displeased, and we get this lovely shot of the entire family, which also really showcases the size discrepancy between the adults and juveniles. The adults themselves are fantastic as well, each with their own unique feathering and patterning, ranging from the black on the left through to the middling greys in the middle and the rusted underbelly of the one on the right. The narration mentions how their survival relies on a strange event occurring miles away. Now, of course, now I have seen the show, seen the episode in its entirety as I record this, and whilst I kind of get what they're getting at, this does not feel well explained in the episode. I'm actually not 100% sure what it's referring to be totally honest with you. It might be, well, we'll mention it in a second, it might be what we're about to talk about. But anyways, we're zooming off over the sea of sand to a drowned forest. There's a lot more environmental shots in this episode compared to the last. Attracted by the waters near the forest, a huge herd of Nematosaurus and an as of yet unnamed Titanosaurs are approaching together. Very cool to see this cross-species herding behaviour. But wait, that's not all. Prehistorically is spotted waddling adorably between the stumping sauropods. And I really want to give another shout out to the sound design here. The herd is moving through this vast canyon to get to the water, and their cries echo beautifully against the cavern walls, replicating so well that kind of sharp echo you hear when you lob a rock into a chasm. We've all been there. The echo seems to reverberate for miles as it finds all these different myriad routes through the chasm. It sounds very much like that. It's very, very effective. The raptors, however, are waiting for them, looking resplendent, spying on the travelling herd through cracks in rock that are beautifully framed. Of course, a Velociraptor isn't taking down a Titanosaur, something else lurks nearby, and again we return to that horror film framing from episode 1, with ominous cries heard reverberating against distant rock. It's very effective, and yes, our spotty red Tarbosaurus has returned, and whoever filmed this has clearly been watching a lot of Jaws. You hear these predators and catch little glimpses long before they come into frame. You feel and see the fear of the sauropods before you see what spooked them. It really is horror 101 and I'm living for it. It's fantastic. The Tarbosaurus approaches, panic spreads, sauropods begin to topple to the ground, and I'm not saying it's a direct reference to King Kong 05, but it's basically a direct reference to King Kong 05. The hunting dynamics here though are really interesting. The sauropods are trapped in the tight canyon with the encroaching Tarbosaurus, but the Prehistoric escapes to higher ground, right into the path of the raptors. It also showcases the intelligent ambush behaviour of these raptors, as one chases a Prehistoric right into the waiting claws of a waiting hidden raptor, which proceeds to boot the Prehistoric in the face, sending it careening off the cliff edge. This is sort of played as a moment of humour, but I suspect it is on purpose. I don't think it's an accident. Some modern birds, like golden eagles, have been seen grabbing hold of their prey, like mountain goats and stuff like that, and attempting to drag it off and down the side of mountains, hoping that gravity will do the work for them. It's not a leap to suggest that velociraptors would behave like, well, raptors. The babies return as the feast begins, reacting wonderfully to the movements of the corpse as they clamber all over it, and look at this little dude stretching his wings out. I love them so goddamn much. Now, I think this might be the event that the other thing was referring to, you know, the passage of the sauropods through the chasm. I don't know what else it would be. It seems like a little bit of a leap, but it is what it is. We're staying in Asia, but moving to China now for the returning from season 1 in glorious sapphire feathering Korothoraptor. These open ground nests have been laid by the females, but it's the male's job to protect them from predators and from the glare of the desert sun that threatens to make Korothoraptor omelettes. This is actually another behaviour also seen in modern avian dinosaurs, as emperor penguin males will guard their eggs diligently whilst the female goes and gallivants around the sea. It's tough work for the males though, and it's visible in their animations, constantly sucking down breath to try and survive this searing heat. And one odd dinosaur by the by, the arching sculpt crest, hugely curved mouth shape and those gigantic eyes. These things would fit right into Pandora, no problem whatsoever. There's been much less camera trickery in this episode so far, but there is a really nice display of it here as we get a time lapse of the egg clutch, Korothos included, emphasizing the huge length of time the males must stand guard in this oppressive heat. As night and cooler temperatures approach, the males begin to take turns to hunt, extolling the benefits of nesting in a colony as it remains always protected. Or does it? Dum dum dum. A Korothoraptor approaches in the dark, a fairly unexpected addition to the series. This is a dromaeosaurid from Mongolia. One of the reasons it's unexpected, however, is that Korothoraptor has only been found in Mongolia and Korothoraptor has only been found in China. Whilst there's no evidence for either dinosaur in either location, it's not outside the realm of possibility, of course, that a species could have travelled long distances over time. I do find it a weird choice though, as there are several other oviraptorids present in the Barangayot formation where Korothoraptor is found, such as Chonchoraptor or Nemetomyia. I suspect, without wishing to seem overly negative, it may just be a budgetary and timing issue. They'd probably have preferred a different dinosaur here if possible, but it's not always feasible. There's some subversive framing here as the Kuru appears to be stalking the oviraptorids, but in fact she's waiting for an opportunity to steal an egg away. And there's some lovely irony there with oviraptor history, right? I assume she wanted to steal the egg away, but no, this girl is brazen. She juts her jaws right in there and is feasting. The yolk texture is wonderful, it might sound odd, but it is, and it's either a fantastic physics simulation or real-world photography spliced over the Kulu, who is now stuffing her face as much as she can until she gets caught. Takes me back to childhood. She's eventually caught, however, stealing a bonus egg away for good measure as the Korothoraptor sounds the alarm, which is a brilliant sound that really does sound like the dinosaur equivalent of an alarm. It's this obnoxious yapping that calls the group to attention. It turns out, however, she's bringing the egg to her babies, and goddammit, not again. They're somehow even cuter with their bobbly little heads and spotted feathers. She calls to them with a cat-like purring, really emphasizing again this episode's theme of parenthood. The animation here is wonderful as they flop around trying to crack open the egg, again played up as a comedy scene. You really get the impression that these little guys are weightless, just sacks of organs and light bones like a modern bird. You know, if you hold up a baby bird, or even a lot of adult birds today, you can barely feel it in your palm, and these little Korothoraptors sell that same sort of lack of weight. They do crack open the egg by pushing it off a cliff in a callback to their Velociraptor cousins, and they feast the night away. And again, the jaunty music really sells the comedy of the scene. It's reminiscent of the Baby Rex from season 1. Our next segment is also in Mongolia and features the Ankylosaur Tarchia. Tarchia, as you can see, has a gigantic nose. This helps them cool the air as it passes through. This is something I've seen suggested not for Tarchia specifically, but for another Mongolian ankylosaurid, Seychania. It's also a mechanism employed by some modern arid climate animals like camels. Food is scarce in this environment, and the travelling pair butt into each other as they tussle over a surviving shrub. One of them, disappointed, heads off alone and gives us this beautiful shot of it strolling through a ravine, backlit by a sliver of harsh desert sun. There's a suggestion here by Attenborough that Tarchia could remember the location of natural springs, and it finds one under use by the Prenocephaly, our first but not last Pachycephalosaurid of the new season. Now, I couldn't find any direct evidence for this memory for the Tarchia. It's unlikely to be something that could really be inferred from the fossil record, I suppose, and it's likely instead inspired by the remarkable ability of, say, modern elephants, who are very, very good at remembering and re-finding watering holes. Tarchia, the name does literally mean the brainy one after all. Anyway, back to the Oasis. The Prenos are lovingly animated, all head tilts and quirkiness, and the attention to detail in the way the sand moves against their feet is still stupendously well done. And that's true for all the animals in this show, in this segment. I also really appreciate some of the camera angles at play here. This one resembles a game trail can placed at like a local watering hole, giving us a great view of the encroaching tarsier and the as of yet unaware Prenocephaly. The Preno, as we see up close, are deceptively colourful, with bands of green and red and yellow crossing along their tails, their head domes glimmering in this vast array of colours as it catches the light, similar to a chroma flare paint job on modern cars, as opposed to prehistoric cars. It's hard to get a good shot of it, but it's worth noting the Prenocephaly are also quilled along the back of their tails. You can just make it out here on the right hand side. The tarsier scares them off with a display of strength and by clubbing the sand. This must be a physical fake Ankylosaur club they built for this shot. I don't see how else the sand is so realistic. But if it is fake, then hats off to the VFX artist who made the sand, and if it isn't fake, then hats off to the model designer. Either way, my hat is off. So is everything else, but that's a different conversation entirely. Unfortunately for our tarsier, the commotion has woken a nearby adult of the species. Much duller in coloration as age has taken its toll on its pigmentation and its lust for life probably. This full-size adult is much larger, twice the heft in fact, and not too pleased about being disturbed. We're seeing here once again that ridged approach to the beak for tearing off vegetation, and even more interesting are the teeth visible under the gum line quite far back into the mouth. Honestly, the level of detail on the tarsier's mouth is pretty incredible, and as is the texture and the fleshiness of the flesh between the jaws. Which I keep forgetting the name of. I keep forgetting the name of that one specific bit. Please do tell me. Suddenly, plot twist, the other tarsier shows up and the power of friendship wins the day, causing the older tarsier to back down from a prospective fight. Before our next scene, there's a brief clip of an Atsdarkid soaring over a canyon. It's not named or even spoken about, but I assume this is meant to be the Mongolian giant, an unnamed pterosaur discovered back in 2017. We return then back to our original segment in the Deccan. An electrical storm is brewing and the winds are shifting. The little Isisaurs are hatching with what can only be described as the cutest noise the world has ever heard. It's this heartbreaking little yelp. We talked about this in the previews, but there's also the presence of an egg tooth here, which is a nice detail. This is a temporary sharp instrument on babies of any species, used to help them break free from their eggy cages. You can see it there on the front of the Isisaur snout. In an episode filled with cute baby dinosaurs, these might somehow take the prize. Their noises, their full elaborate patterns even at birth, and their waddly animations sell them so well for something so inherently unlike anything living today. There are a few moments of, which I don't think I can blame the CGI. The program is fighting a fairly tough battle in that because, especially with things like sauropods, ceratopsids, these are so dissimilar to creatures that we have now that it's hard to see them as real in some way. So the CGI is fighting a tough battle. Anyway, they eat their mother's dung, because what else are you going to eat? It's worth noting the mothers are long gone. In modern animals, this rings pretty true. Typically, animals that nest in huge colonies like this don't tend to look after their young. They tend to lay the eggs and then skedaddle, instead trusting that the huge numbers will do the work and some of them will survive. Exceptions do exist, of course, but generally speaking, that's the case. There's seemingly also pheromones in the feces that will lead the babies to their mothers, awaiting them in the forest where they first began their journeys. It won't be easy though, many dangers await, including molten muddy pits, which claimed the lives of one of the babies very early on, and yes, my heart broke, and something yet more ominous may lurk in the mire. Whilst the babies feast on plants that grew from, yet again, the mother's dung, a predator appears. A stunning rendition of Rajasaurus, all volcanic coloration and beautiful facial ornamentation. Yet another Abelosaurid, getting a lot of love this season so far, clock the tiny Abelosaurid arms. Rajasaurus has been presented with an absolute feast of babies, and he takes advantage. The remaining babies scatter into the cracked rock, which affords us a full look at this beautiful Rajasaurus, potentially my new favourite design in the entire series, and the dinosaur that has most skirted the line of real and CGI for me in this series so far. The animation work as these things bound around the rocky landscape is superb, nimble but really weighty as well. It's a really cool little scene, and it made me terrified. Anyway, the Isisaurus babies survive in decent numbers and make it to the forest, and thus closes out the Badlands. I didn't enjoy this one quite as much as Islands. Some of the scenes felt a little bit ponderous, I would say the initial Isisaurus one in particular, and whilst that is absolutely a thing I wanted for the last episode, it felt a little too far in the other direction here. There was a huge increase in environmental shots, for example, A mix of the two would be ideal for me. It was still a beautiful episode, of course, just not quite on the level of the opener. No episode with so many baby dinosaurs and such beautiful Indian dinosaur designs could get a bad score. Let me know what you thought about Badlands in the comment section down below, and I'll see you lovely folks at the same time tomorrow for Swamps and the very exciting introduction of Pachycephalosaurus. Throw me a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for lots more pee-pee, and I'll see you then. Cheers, much love, as always. Bye-bye.
Reaching out.